feel free to pop up if you have any questions. I will start real quick with one that maybe for Wayne. When do you expect to release KiCad version 9?
Well, for those of you who don't know, we have an annual release schedule now, which we've done. This will be the third year that we've been on an annual release schedule. So Feature Freeze is coming up at the end of this month. And that we have roughly 4 months of, polishing, bug fixing, and prep work. We try to do a release candidate sometime we'll try to do like an RC1 sometime in the middle of December, and then we should release, barring anything unexpected, on January 31st. And that's by design because we always do it. I always do my status update, KiCad status update talk at FOSDEM. So that's always the weekend after release. So that should be, so 9 should be out January 31st, 2025. So that's our release schedule.
So this is a question relating to what Tom said when working on the layout, but it's really matters every part of KiCad now, I think. As the Power program has matured, I started working with it in version 3, I think. There's going to probably be more and more of when you try to fix something, you're also breaking something else as the program becomes larger and larger and nothing stands alone inside the program anymore and the interaction becomes bigger and bigger. How does that, what's your philosophy on it? And what's the thought process when you're in these moments where you're like, oh, there's something lying there, you have to change it, you have to make it better, but you're also risking, making something worse in the process? Well,
I'm just speaking from my own coding experience. We have added a lot of unit tests over the years. Even the geometry libraries have a lot of unit tests, but there's always some corner cases that we miss, right? So you make a change and it breaks something unexpectedly, even though all the unit tests pass. So as we find those failures, typically we add unit tests, so that at least if that particular edge case doesn't break again. Now, is there another edge case laying in wait? Of course there is. It's but until we have the necessary information to track it down and fix it, we can't create a unit test for it because we don't know that it's a bug yet. But yes, we have done a lot of unit testing, and KiCad's significantly better. It was non-existent in 3. So yeah, we definitely. I think it's a reason why our quality is getting better too, is because those unit tests exist. So when people break stuff, they have to answer for it. So
one thing that I neglected at the beginning, I should do a quick introduction. Wayne, if you wouldn't mind passing the microphone down, if you could just state your name and what part of the project you work on or contribute to.
Hi, I'm Clement. I'm a librarian, and I also train new librarians.
Hello, I'm Aristides. I'm also a librarian and help with finding bugs.
I've already been introduced, but for those of you who didn't hear it, I'm Wayne Stamball. I'm the KiCad project lead developer.
Hi, I'm Mark Rushka. I'm a mixed bag of maintaining the website, some of the back-end services. I do a lot of Windows-related troubleshooting and development for KiCad, along with our miscellaneous features like the command line interface.
Hi, I'm Tom Wostowski. I'm one of the developers, a bit less active recently, but yeah, doing a lot of under-the-hood stuff for KiCad in the past.
Hi, I'm Carsten. I'm working on the librarian team as well. And yeah, I'm also taking care of a lot of our library tooling and onboarding of people.
So I have one question. We have 3 librarians. Obviously, the KiCad library has exploded somewhat from relatively humble beginnings to currently in KiCad in our master branch. I think we're at 8 gigabytes of library data. By far, by volume, we are 99% library. So you might consider us a library project that has an interface kind of attached to it. How does the library team manage contributions in a way that allows this to not become an unwieldy mess? Because it's relatively good right now.
So from a librarian perspective, it is some kind of unwieldy mess. We have lots of contributions, and we are really happy for those, because so one of the really interesting parts about being a librarian is you're being introduced to new parts that you've never would have thought about that they exist. So join us. So the original question, how do we manage all of that, I think, Seth?
Yes.
We do reviews. So big part of our work is making manual reviews. So like people actually look at every aspect of a newly contributed symbol of a print. We check every single pin of a symbol, check every name, every pin type. We make sure it fits into what we already have. So consistency is a really big goal for our library. So if you have, let's say, one RS485 transceiver and you want to put another one in, so you select another symbol that should ideally be a drop-in replacement, or at least you won't have to redo all the pins, but just a few of them. And we try to make those work together. So also our, let's say if you look at USB ports and chips that interface with those, we try to make sure that they are easy to wire up. And that is the consistency we're looking in. That is a lot of manual work, but we have a great team to do that. And we are also developing the tools for automated checking of lots of things.
So I'm wondering about what's the status of Wayland support, because I think I've
I'm going to defer that question to the Wayland project.
Yeah.
No, it's gotten better recently, but it still needs some love. If you really want to save yourself some grief, run X. Or if you're on Linux, I mean, I'd love to tell you that it's going to be fixed tomorrow, but there's so because Wayland's hasn't implemented probably 50% of the stuff that's in X Windows or in X11, you're going to have to live with just cruddy just placement and stuff, and the mouse behavior is, even if you turn off the warping, I mean it's still not as nice of a experience as with X, and until they work out all those wrinkles, and it's probably going to be a couple of more versions down the road before that's or at least it's as good of experience as X is. Now, if you want to be one of those people that want to help the Wayland project work those things, hey, I'm not going to stop you. But if you're like a lot of people who need to get stuff done and that's not really an option, yeah, you're just beating your head against the wall if you don't use X.
Yeah, just to comment, it's not so much that Wayland hasn't developed the features that KiCad needs yet. It's that Wayland doesn't want the features that KiCad needs.
I was giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Well, I mean, they'll own that too. They want to change the user design paradigm into something that no other platform is. And so as a cross-platform tool, KiCad can either support the dominant paradigm that X represents and is the same on Mac OS and on Windows, or we can simply redesign the entire user interface paradigm to match what Wayland wants to be. And at some point, that maybe someone will do that, but it's not there, and there's no path for it to get there. So you use X for the rest of your life. Not X Wayland, incidentally, because X Wayland also has issues that
yeah.
are going to be so. But only if you're using KiCad professionally. If you just if you don't mind, if you run Gentoo or something like that, Arch, that you need to rebuild all your packages every other week, then maybe that's for you.
So it hasn't come up, but it came up earlier in the discussion about Python plugins. So the question. Oh, okay, sorry. It's more directional than I thought it was. So I'd like to expand on the what's going to happen with the transition from the Python plugin, which we have now, versus the IPC stuff. So I hear people say that we have a Python API. That's not exactly correct. What we have is a wrapper around all the internal KiCad code, or at least the board editor KiCad code, that gets updated every time it gets built. So if we ever make any changes to the function, the class methods inside the Python wrapper will just change the definition. It's just the way it is. It's how it works, right? So we do break things occasionally. But the problem with that paradigm, it was an easy way to solve the problem when we first started out. We could get a Python support, and it was cheap and dirty. The problem is Swig is indiscriminate. It will just expose everything. And so a well-crafted script can take down a running instance of KiCad. It's pretty easy to do, right? So then you end up with data loss if you have a rogue plugin, right? Because you could have some work that you did, run a plugin, and bang, it's gone because it just took KiCad down. So we realized a while back that's problematic. We just can't live with that. It's too risky in terms of the stability of the KiCad. So that's the reason we never swigged out the schematic side, because we would just end up with the exact same problem in the schematic editor. We said, no, that doesn't make any sense. We already have a problem with this. So we knew we had to go to some type of other layer to expose the KiCad internals for scripting. And that's why we are using internal procedure calls. So they earlier talk about Python scripting. What that's going to do is it's going to limit the exposure of what's available to you as a script writer. Now, the goal is to swig out all the important parts, like get the board, get all the things on the board. But you're no longer going to be able to directly manipulate those internally and bring KiCad down. What you'll do is you'll make a call back to the procedure layer saying, I want to change these objects. And if you do something wrong or invalid, it'll just say, nope, you can't do that. It's not going to crash. Your plugin will complain. So that transition, that was quite a big development task, okay? So that transition is going to take some time. We're also at the same time exposing the schematic. So the IPC stuff will also cover the schematic editor. So the bits and pieces of the schematic, you'll be able to load the schematic, load the internal objects, and do things like generate bill of materials and stuff like that, or change bill of materials from the IPC. So at least that functionality will exist. Now, we know that there's going to be cases where people are going to start converting their existing Python scripts over to the new IPC, and we're going to be missing bits and pieces because somebody dug way down in deep and they thought they needed to do this or do that. So we're going to have to write that stuff as we go. The goal is to get the major bits and pieces out, and it's already in version 9, or it's actually in the development branch now. So if you want to start playing around with it, you can. We'll probably spend a lot of the time in version 10 as plugin writers start to transition to the new IPC code. we'll be able to fit, add in the missing bits and pieces that people have used that we didn't think they would have used by using the Python plugin. Once we have that's relatively stable and everybody has what they need, we're going to just put a hard line and say, you have one more version to convert your scripts over to the new IPC code, and then we're going to disable the KiCad plugin. That's going to go away. And there's a reason. There's a couple of reasons for that. Right now, we actually ship our own custom version of the Python interpreter with set on like Windows. Do we do it on Mac too? So if you have like your own version of Python installed on Windows and Mac, when you run the KiCad plugin, it's not using that. It's using this specially compiled version of the Python that we install so we can control what's there. In the future, your plugin, if you want to use Python with the IPC stuff, you'll call pip and just install it on your local. So that means it takes a huge maintenance burden off the team of having to supply Python for for everything but Linux. Linux, it's all seamless. That's never been an issue. So that way there you can run whatever version of Python you want with all the Python stuff, the external libraries that you want to use with Python. We won't be defining that. So all we will define is the high Python, the Python layer, abstraction layer that allows you to make the IPC calls. And it'll greatly simplify that for both the KiCad core development team as well as the user. You won't have to have, because we still get occasionally somebody will be running their own Python. It's like, hey, I don't have the PCB plugin. Well, it's not in your Python. It's in the Python we distribute with KiCad. So that's why that's happening. And then it's not to make everybody's lives miserable. It's just to try to make KiCad more stable and more reliable. And this way here you can use eventually whatever language you like rather than just Python to write plugins. There's also somebody committed Rust bindings. I don't know who did that, but there's Rust bindings for the IPC stuff. And I suspect over time somebody will probably step up and whatever their favorite JavaScript, who cares? I mean, pick one, maybe it's Pascal, pick your favorite language. I mean, as long as it's something you want to use, we're willing to create, the bindings will be easy enough to create, but the IPC will be stable. It won't allow you to take KiCad down in a ball of flames and lose work. So.
I have a question for the library team. So we started using KiCad back in like 2016, and at that point we had the feeling that the library is not what we really need, because we wanted to have, or at least we felt like we wanted to have a hard mapping between symbols and footprints, and we want to annotate extra stuff like manufacturer names and MPNs and stuff like that. And today, I'm looking at our internal library and I'm looking at the KiCad library, and I'm thinking, well, I would really like to leverage all the good work you're putting into there, because your quality is so much better than what we have internally. And now I think it would be really great to have a way forward to use the KiCad library, but with some of our magic dust on top of that. And, well, I'm not sure, maybe there is some project in that direction that starts doing that. Maybe you can just elaborate a little bit. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I think the solution for you might be using the database library feature. So that's intended to be used for people that have a parts library already. And what you do with your existing parts library, so in your parts library, you usually have existing parts, real parts with manufacturer part number. And then you connect them to the symbols and footprints from the stock library with that feature. That might be a solution for you. Regarding the general direction of the official library, so we thought about adding more metadata as well, like manufacturer part number, for example, orderable part numbers and stuff like this. But we won't do that because it's way too much maintenance overhead. That's even more stuff to check. So that's a no. But what we are doing instead is we're developing more toward fully. Okay, I think I was at the fully specified parts. So you see new parts that are added are mostly fully specified parts. So they have most of the part number written in the symbol. We omit some parts like, for example, in our part numbers, we don't have the packaging. Like, is it a tape or reel or tube or whatever? That's not part of the library. But the package type is usually like, the footprint. If that's part of the part number, we have that in there. And you have a default footprint assigned. So you can just take that symbol, put it in your board, and be done with it. You will still have to put in yourself the orderable part number or your distributor stuff or whatever. But that you can automate with the database library feature.
Thanks. Quick question in line with the world's most popular EDA tagline. You have any insights on the wider adoption and acceptance of KiCad in the industry by this point, and how it relates to your funding and your organizational structure growth, how it benefits open source?
So we track downloads, and that's kind of somewhat a decent metric. But more importantly, we now have very good working relationships with quite a few of the major board vendors, both domestically and in both domestically and in what's going on out there. Yeah. And so in Asia as well, right? So we work with our partners, and we just go by, we have information from them exactly what percentage of their orders are designed in KiCad, because they either have a direct plugin that they can just directly take the KiCad board file and then do the post-processing on it, and then generate your boards. And maybe they can also do population stuff with the BOM and the board. So like Eisler, for example, we're now over 40% of all, or maybe it's over 50% now, over all their orders are in KiCad. And even some of our Asian board houses, early, a couple years ago, we were only a 5, 10, 15. A lot of those now, we're the biggest single, like 30, 35% of all their orders were designed with KiCad. So because we have this working relationship with them, there's a lot of sponsorship. We have the revenue and sharing agreements that we have, where if they're a commercial entity and they want to have their plugin in KiCad proper, they have to meet certain requirements, otherwise, they can always download it as a standalone, their own thing, but they also, and we let them define that. We're pretty loose with the whole thing. We just say, look, we're sending all these orders your way. Can we give us a tiny fraction of the revenue? And yeah, it's really helped fund the project. We've been able to pay. So for example, for those of you who don't know, WX Widgets is our tool, our UI library, right? We paid some WX Widgets developers to fix some of the things that we needed fixed for KiCad, right? So the whole ecosystem benefits from the revenue that we make from our board vendors. So, and we're hoping to expand that at some point to maybe component vendors. DigiKey is one of our our primary benefactors, and they were one of our, next to Eisler, they were probably they were the second platinum donor, I think. And so, yeah, we value value our relationships with them, and they're beneficial for us, they're beneficial for them. So yes, that's kind of how it's working right now. And I think that has a lot to do with the pace of development and also the acceptance in the industry, because all these major players in the electronics in the electronics world we have direct relationships with the project.
I have two questions. The first one is, at previous companies I used Altium, and the thing what I really like there is that you could use TrueType fonts. But if I use these TrueType fonts to place a logo on the PCB, they are distorted in KiCad. Is that something that will be fixed in the future?
I can answer that one. Yeah, the bug with a TrueType font being distorted might be fixed, but unless you submit a bug report, we'll never know.
And the second one was about pin parameters. The thing with Altium is nice that you could add a pin parameter and you could drag it everywhere. Is that something that also will happen in the future? You have a pin and then you could add a parameter to it to say a pin name, and then afterwards you can drag it anywhere you want instead of that it's fixed next to the pin. Yeah.
Do you mean the pin names and the pin numbers as part of the symbol?
Pin names and pin numbers, for example.
Yeah, I can't answer that.
Question about router, about PCBs? No,
Schematic editor.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Wayne?
Yeah, that's probably not, it's not going to happen for 9, but it's on my radar. I had a working, in my personal repo, I had a working version of that, because one of the, it's born out of a request for being able to like have, if you have different units, like say you have an FPGA board and you have it broken out into sections that are all different sizes, the fields always end up being the exact same place, because right now it's only at the top level. So, but yeah, that's going to happen, but it probably will not happen for 9. I don't think that's going to be ready. I got too many other things to get done by the end of the month.
I will say that pin names and pin numbers, being able to move those independently, if it's not covered by Wayne's modifications at the unit level, really good feature request to put in, because I don't think we have that feature actually specified yet.
There is a bug request. There is a bug report on that, and it's quite old. It's been around for a while.
Are there any plans in supporting a multi-board projects?
What?
Multi-board.
There is, I believe there is I think there's an FR for that. I do think there's a feature request for that. Yeah, maybe someday. Right now, it's not on the radar. We have too many other, like, we want to get things like variants. And of course, we wanted pin gate swapping, but maybe now that Tom said it's not worth it, maybe we won't. No, it's not that we couldn't do that. It's just there's other features I think that are going to be priority. But I mean, maybe that's something enough people would want. Like, we would like to do. We've talked quite a bit about doing, flex rigid, right? You mentioned upvoting issues. I did mention that in my. Did everybody see my talk how to upvote issues on the bug tracker? So if you want a new feature, okay. We don't necessarily know how popular that is. We're just guessing based on our own experience. So one of the things that allows you to take a new feature request and bubble it up to the top of the list is to go in and, if you go into the top of a new feature request, there'll be a thumbs up, thumbs down, little logos at the top. You just click and it counts, right? So it keeps a counter. So the higher the counter, we know that that's something that is more interesting to people, where we have bug reports that nobody ever upvoted it that are 4 years old. So, or not bug new features that, yeah, they might be nice to have, but that's just a one person feature rather than a whole bunch of people features. So that we do prioritize based on that. So as Seth mentioned, if it's really that important to you, okay, that's what KiCad Services does. We do contracted development. In fact, there's a lot of new features in version 9 that were paid for by commercial entities that would have never been developed or would have been developed 5 years from now, right? But we have companies that wanted that feature, so they were willing to. So we do contract. Seth and I at KiCad Services do contract work. That work takes all priority because it's paid. I mean, and that's fair. I mean, if you're coming with us with money, then you go to the top of the queue.
Do you consider to add some kind of assembly variant manager to the KiCad?
Variants?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Board and multiple sets of components.
That was on my list for 9, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Just because of timing. It will. I've actually started working on it. I just don't think I'm going to have it ready by the deadline. So it's going to be more of a probably early in version 10.
Sure. There's a talk tomorrow about the plugin that manages that. So
that's my
talk tomorrow.
Yes, there is a plugin that allows you to do that, but it's not in KiCad proper. So
yes, and I have a question about solder paste clearance. Solder paste clearance is only applied to copper pads, SMD copper pads, but not to SMD apertures. My question is, what is the reason for this different handling? If you try to reduce the amount of solder paste that you apply to an SMD pad.
Sure.
Yes. This is only applied to copper pads, but not to SMD apertures. And I don't understand why.
Yeah, I don't know why we wouldn't do
handled differently.
That sounds like a bug. I don't understand why we wouldn't do.
Yeah, no, it's by design. Yeah. Because if you are placing an aperture, an SMD aperture, then that is not relative to a copper pad. So the generated apertures are going to be relative to the copper pad, and they're adjusted to account for manufacturability. If you are placing an actual graphical aperture, then we are assuming that you are making that exactly the size you want it.
Need to reduce the amount of paste I apply. Actually, should apply to those.
It sounds like we might need a feature that allows you to choose whether or not you want that to selectively apply or not. Changing that without a feature would modify a number of boards and clearly go counter to the reason that it was initially set there. But it might be another feature request would be a great idea for that.
As long as we have as a follow-up question, as long as we have the librarians here, how do you decide when to use an SMD aperture? So when do you use it for below the exposed pad, for example?
To be honest, I'm not quite sure what an SMD aperture is. Is that like the exposed pad?
It's like a pad, but without the copper. If you have a large exposed pad, then you have typically 4 or 6 of these apertures, but they are not connected to copper, but they are just to reduce the amount of paste that is applied to the exposed pad.
Okay, yeah. So, and I forgot your question. Say the question again, please.
How do you decide which kind of pad you use, a copper pad or an aperture?
So most of the footprints we have in the library are auto-generated with the KiCad footprint generator, and that has a default setting that it splits up if you have a big exposed pad, it will split it up into different apertures automatically. You can control it by overriding it, there's no real science behind what we are doing. So we follow IPC guidelines, and that's where the defaults for the generator come from. If you're not happy with those, or if you have a really good reason for us to change them, in the latter case, please come to me, talk to me about the details, and we will probably just change the defaults and regenerate all the footprints. That's what the generators are for. But yeah, right now they basically follow IPC, and I think we have like 65% paste coverage for those big exposed pads per default. And one more point, sometimes we make footprints or we merge footprints that are contributions that exactly follow the vendor. So we also allow those in the library. They have a slightly different naming convention, so you know that this is a vendor footprint and not an IPC footprint. And those just do exactly what the vendor puts in the data sheet.
The reason why I'm asking is there is no feature to disable solder paste application to a specific footprint. And this is what my plugin does. It tries to disable copper paste application per footprint. And what I do is I just use ridiculously large or negative amount of relative solder paste clearance to fix that, but it doesn't apply to the solder to the aperture pads, and hence it doesn't work as I like. That's the reason.
If I might add something, how about just fiddling a bit with your footprints and designing versions that match your solder paste coverage requirements? This is at least what we do for our electronics. Because there are subtleties in the reflow process, in the pick and place processes that sometimes merit just editing the footprints and slightly changing them in order to increase the production yield, I presume.
Yes, of course. It's manual work, but of course that's one solution.
Yeah, and in the end, if you're running a rather large run of PCBs, just maintaining a few customized footprints might be worth the effort.
I can add a small thing to that. So the goal of our library is like be good for about 80% of the people. You will always have people that have another process that have really specific requirements, and we cannot cater to all of them, obviously. So your case might be one of those that we just can't do with our stock default footprints.
Going back onto the IPC API, so not the Institute for Printed Circuits IPC that we just talked about, how will this integrate with KiCad? So I could have looked this up, how it's in the source code, but I think maybe this is interesting for everyone. So like I can have a statically linked binary that I can distribute, but users won't be able to call that from inside KiCad, right?
Well, the way the new IPC works is there is a Python plugin which you would install using pip. So that code would just be downloaded, it would build on your system, and then it would be local to your Python, right? And then that would give you complete access to the IPC. So as long as KiCad was running, you would have access to what? Okay.
Yeah, so you want to build a static binary that talks to KiCad, right?
No, I was just thinking about like how it will integrate.
If it can open a Unix socket, it can talk to KiCad.
Yeah, but the plugin manager won't work anymore, right? Because then I would have to, if I have a binary, I need to compile it for ARM and x86 and then distribute it somehow. So you cannot call plugins the way it was possible before.
You can if they're installed, but that's
okay. Yeah. So and then there needs to be like some kind of definition that tells KiCad how to talk to this plugin, and then it needs to be running at the same time.
Yeah. Just a note: we don't distribute statically linked binaries.
Yeah, this was just
in the plugin content manager
not.
at all. We only distribute ones that have the source code that are interpreted. So we'll maintain that for IPC. There'll need to be some interpreted something that as long as that works. There are some plugins that require running, some additional install process. I think free routing is a good example, right? It requires an additional install process in order to get that to work. So if your plugin wants to be statically linked, then
No, this was just an example. Like it's the same for Python, right? If you don't run your own Python anymore, then users need to have working Python. So there needs to be like more documentation on how to get it running. It's all manageable. It was just like a question of how it will look.
Hi, so we talked about the DRC checking, how important it is today. And I was wondering, when you set the net class and clearance, it would be very nice to be able to set between net classes clearance and on different layers. So that would be nice to have a graphical UI to set all these parameters. Is that something?
Would you like clearances to be defined between different layers, like a track on one layer and a track another layer to have horizontal clearance set?
No. Net class, if you have 10 net classes and you set clearance.
You can, if you just want to set custom clearances between any pair of net classes, you can currently use the custom rules feature.
I know, but it is a lot of to manage if you have 10 in.
If somebody contributes such a GUI, sure.
Please.
Yeah, so we have some discussions going on right now with another contracted development. Again, someone feels that this is very important for them, and they are debating, like this year or next year, when would they like to fund the developer hours to dedicate to that. And so once that goes through, we'll develop it not for version 9, maybe for version 10.
All I'm saying is that it's already possible with a bit of typing or copy and paste. GUI would be nice to have, although it will be a bit challenging to integrate it so that it doesn't clash with the custom DRC rules. So yes, it's a project and it will take a bit of time.
Talking about custom DRC rules, Tom, in your presentation, you've used reference designators in the custom DRC rules. Is there the possibility to use curly braces text variable replacements so that the references stay stable because they are internally using their UUID? As in the text fields, which I find, by the way, a very cool feature, having stable reference designators.
I don't think there is such a possibility at this very moment, but it's, I think, a pretty low-hanging fruit, so feel free to create an issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that we don't forget about it.
Yeah. Okay, last one.
Speaking about custom DRC rules and also what you just mentioned in your presentation, Tom, like the interactive router, there's much more stuff you can express in the custom DRC rules than what the interactive router honors when doing walk around or push and shove. Is there? I understand that there is a lot of more complexity and what you can do in the time budget allotted when doing interactive routing, but are there plans of moving more of that functionality or evaluating those rules live and constraining the interactive router by them from the custom DRC rules?
I'm not sure I fully understand your question.
Custom DRC rules being interpreted by the router as you're routing.
There is a trade-off, unfortunately, between performance and accuracy. I'm of the opinion that I would sacrifice the accuracy of the live DRC for performance. The most notable case is when you have rural areas with different clearances on your board, because basically it's collision check with a sometimes complex polygon per each pair of candidates that might be colliding. And optimizing this without losing accuracy, but I'm talking about accuracy during live routing, not during DRC, this will not be affected, is quite a challenge. So we might have to make some trade-offs, some deals there. But yes, there is the goal is for the router to support most of the complex rules live. I have an unfinished code that also speeds up the DRC compilers and enables caching of certain expressions. But I'm not sure this will make it to V9, maybe V10 nightlies, because this is a very complex subject. What I would like to focus before is fixing the most urgent issues in the router and fixing the differential per placer.
Okay, thank you very much.